Welcome to the first episode of Get Real with Abiola Adeyoola. You know, as believers, when we read the scriptures, we read about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and of course, they're fantastic people to learn from. But there's a particular scripture that talks about living epistles. I believe that in every generation, we have individuals and persons who are alive and whom we can see the grace of God being poured upon their lives, and that grace brings about a transformation. It brings about a change. It brings about an example that others can truly follow. So this is Get Real with Abiola Adeyoola. There's going to be lots of interviews with fantastic people, and today is the first episode. It gives me great joy to welcome my guest for today, Mrs. Oluyemi Ogedengbe. She is a wife, she's a mother, she's an entrepreneur, she's a pharmacist, she's a caterer. What else is she? She is many things, and today we're going to learn from her. One thing I found out about life, I found out that there's so many people who have walked a particular journey, and when they've walked that journey, those of us that are coming behind, there's so many things we can learn along the way. You don't have to enter into a ditch when somebody has already entered into the ditch. You don't have to make the same mistake that others have already made. They've made those mistakes, you can learn from them. And not just in mistakes. What about the successes? There are those who have walked a path of success that if we simply follow them, we would also have the same successful results. So please put your hands together as we welcome Mrs. Oluyemi Ogedengbe. Thank you so much for joining me today on Get Real with Abiola Adeyoola. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you, Pastor Bill.
There's so much I know about you, but I believe that this interview is going to just unfold so many dimensions of who you are. I want to first start off with your family. You know, what kind of home did you grow up with? You know, mama and papa, I don't know how many siblings you had, you know, the high low moments. What was that family setup for you? So that we at least get to know the background that you're coming from.
Thank you, Pastor Biola. My father was a priest, a bishop in the Methodist Church. My mother was a nurse. Between the two of them, they had 8 of us.
Wow.
Of which I am the last. And to the glory of God, we are all surviving.
Whoa.
And, I grew up in an enclosed environment because all my life I lived in mission houses by virtue of the work that my father did. So we were well protected.
Wow. Now, growing up in a mission house and Papa was a priest, did you automatically become a Christian? Because there's that expectation that, of course, if your father or mother is a pastor, a deacon, or an elder, it is assumed that the children just pick up the faith, continue in the faith. How was your faith, knowing that your father was a priest? Was there pressure? Did you feel also that pressure?
Of course, expectations were high from church members, and the kind of school I went to was such that my primary school was run by the Methodist Church. So it was more or less like an extension of our home. My father was the type that would ask you to go to school on time, and if you refuse, somehow he will get into the school before you with his cane in his hands.
Wow.
And he will hand over to the head teacher. Beat my daughter. She has no reason to be late to school. That's the kind of background.
Please, I want to pause there. Your father would allow the teacher
The driver will bring him from the mission house. He will not work so that he could get to school ahead of you.
Wow.
And he would hand over the cane in his hands to the head teacher. Beat my daughter. She has no reason to be late this morning.
You know, this sounds just out of this world because we have a generation of parents today where the teacher would discipline the child and the parent would go to the school and insist that such teachers are either suspended or fired. because either they beat the child or literally discipline the child for doing wrong. So to think that there was once a time in Nigeria where a father would take a child to the school and empower the teacher to discipline the child for doing what is wrong. Wow, we look forward to those days coming back because we don't have those days. We don't have those days anymore. And it's a message to parents. It takes a village to raise a child. You're doing your own part at home, and I believe the teachers also should be empowered to do their own part. Do not go to school and ask a teacher to be suspended or to be fired because they corrected your child. Either they spoke to the child or either they gave a small punishment to the child. Wow, that is just awesome. So you felt the pressure because, your dad was a priest.
Yeah.
You went to a Methodist school.
Yeah.
How was your Christian? Were you a Christian? Were you a born again believer? Or how was your walk with God then?
No, I wasn't. And because I was in the mission house, I was the last born, and that gave me opportunity to listen to a lot of conversations, that I should ordinarily not be, privy to. Because as the last born, I will be the one to serve the tea, to serve the cook, and all that stuff. So I dropped a lot in a lot of conversations. And then, way back then, I saw a bit of hypocrisy in the church. And that kind of, made me to be rebellious. Was like...
You were put off.
I was put off. What's all this nonsense, And even though I saw my father, being somebody who was open, candidly counseling people on, what they ought to do and what they ought not to do. But even at that, I saw a lot, I had a lot. So that made me to be...
Wow. So we're not talking about 8 children. I wish I could speak to Mama to ask her, how was she able to raise 8 children?
Honestly, I don't understand.
Wow. So were there fights at home?
Oh, yes.
Who wants this? Who needs this? Who requires this? How did she even spread love to all the 8 children? How did she discipline all the 8 children?
My parents, God bless them wherever they are. I saw, this unusual agreement between the 2 of them. They agreed concerning discipline. You want to go out, you go and meet my dad. My dad was soft to some extent. My mom wasn't, And my father would say, have you asked your mom? If my mom says no, my father too will say no.
So there was unity in that marriage.
Even though they had their differences. But when it comes to their children, they agree.
What would you say are the core values that your parents gave to you? When you look back now and you look at who you have become as a woman, as a mother, as a wife, as an entrepreneur, I want you to identify at least 2-3 values that this was instilled in me by my parents, and I still hold on to those values till date.
Number 1, my father taught us that no matter the circumstance or situation that you face in life, if Jesus cannot solve it, forget it.
So the foundation of your faith came from your dad?
It came from my dad. And number 2, he instilled in us that there's no other God except the Lord Jesus Christ. No matter the pressure, idolatry, go and see something, you only complicate your matters. And he taught us from the Bible, from the children of Israel, how God showed himself, mighty on their behalf, and they still went into idolatry to worship other gods, and how he from time to time, he punished them for their sins. Then he said, well, wherever you find yourself, be truthful.
Wow. Honesty was a value that was
Honesty
passed on.
was in a value that was, just say the truth. Say it as it is, you know. And I saw him modeling that, you know, right in our presence when he had one or two crises, you know, in the church before he passed. So, I mean, with those kind of values, you know, I don't think one, well, needed any other thing.
Let's talk about your educational background. I know that you are a pharmacist by profession, but how did you get to pharmacy?
My mom was a nurse. I remember I said earlier on that she had 8 of us. In her bedroom, she always had this, like a cupboard, a chest, you know, and it contained all kinds of over-the-counter drugs. And she will tell you that if you are having headache and she's not around, this particular one, you can take it.
Was that instruction to all the children?
The eldest in the family would at any point in time know. You know, that time there was no phone. There was no mobile phone.
Yes.
Even though we had the other land phone, you know, but it was limited. So, at the same time, I'm the last born. When she wants to give injection to my older ones, Yemi, go to the chest, get me cyclopine, which is procaine penicillin injection. I'll go there, I'll read it, I'll bring it to her.
Wow.
From there, I developed interest. On my own, I would go to those medications and look at them. What do they contain?
Wow.
What is the active ingredient? That was how I developed interest in pharmacy. As a matter of fact, when I was going to go into the university, my A-level result actually qualified me to study medicine. My mother did everything to persuade me to study medicine. I said, no.
Wow.
I'm going for pharmacy.
Wow, that's awesome. I want to talk about peer pressure in school, especially primary school, secondary school. We have, you know, it's a major topic amongst young people nowadays. They talk about pressure. Social media does not make it any better, it actually makes it worse. But looking back now at your primary and your secondary school, what was peer pressure like in those days? Did you face anything? Or the values that were instilled in you were enough to see you through? Or there were things you succumbed to and you believed, well, it was probably because of peer pressure. How were you able to cope?
I don't think I had much problem in my primary, secondary. As a matter of fact, I recall an incident when I was coming back from school. In those days, school was you walk to school and you walk back home.
I can imagine.
You know? So, like, maybe 20, 40 of you can start from the school and start walking towards home. So everybody will be dropping off
along the way.
So on this particular day, we didn't take the back of the school. We took the main road. And my father had been warning me that this particular group of, you know,
girls or
boys, girls, I don't want you with them. I didn't know that he saw me.
Wow.
Oh. When we got home, he said, Yemi, who were you with this afternoon? Then I've told you, evil communication corrupts good manners. I have warned you about those girls. I still saw you with them today. Of course, he beats me. So you are quite watchful. and you try very hard not to get into their net. That continued till secondary school. But you see, in the university, it's different.
Yes, of course. I mean, it's like the open sea. Liberty
When you
and
get
freedom.
to the university, the liberty is just there. By the time I got into university, my father was late. My mother was, that was when I discovered that her strength was in her husband. So what she could do was limited. So she handed over the discipline to my older ones. But even at that, would they stay with me on the campus?
No.
Of course, the peer pressure was there. You meet different kinds of people.
Definitely. Wow. You talked about your dad, disciplining you to the point of he had to beat you. And, there's still that conversation till date where when it comes to parenting, there are those who do not believe in beating. As the generation is coming up, it's like, no, it's not acceptable. It's not right. But there are those who still believe that it's important. It's part of the growth of a child. What's your take on beating in raising children?
Well, if I see anything in the Bible, honestly, and I see it written in black and white, I follow it. Proverbs, spare the rod and spoil the child. There was a very lovely balance that my father had to discipline. During the day, he could beat you. He seldom beat. My mother was the bass. But in the night, my father would balance it up. He will come, he will tap you, wake you up, and tell you that, yes, in the afternoon or morning I beat you. If you did the right thing, there was no need for you to have been.
So he's coming back to explain
He will now explain to you
why he disciplined
you and the consequences of your action. And then he will pray with you.
Wow. I think that balance is very important. I didn't, that looking at it now, it's awesome that you are able to discipline a child. You've given the rod, but more importantly, you've also explained. So he didn't beat out of anger, he didn't beat out of transferred aggression, which a lot of parents do, which is not right. Sometimes the mother snaps and she's transferring the frustration of the marriage on the child, or even the husband transferring the frustration of his workplace on the child. But there that Papa could sit down to say, okay, do you understand why I did this? This is why I did this. And the child goes away with understanding. Wow, that's a good one to take home. Now let's talk about your career. You've moved from, please, which university did you go to?
University of Ibadan, Premier University.
Well, we're not going to have that, we will not have that conversation, because I know that my people are here and I want to defend them. The greatest university is, let's just leave it like that so that there will be no fight on this interview table. You went to UI.
Yeah.
When you were in UI, we talked about liberty. How did you enjoy your liberty in UI?
Liberty.
Tell us.
Wow. It was a highway. It was a highway of liberty. I have older ones. My immediate senior brother was somebody who was a happening guy, so to speak. He went to Ife and we were always doing things together. So, it was not out of place for him to come from Ife, pack myself and my friends in the car, and we all go to parties together.
Wow.
And then, of course, we had a group of, everybody had their group of friends, Either those that you have been friends from A-level days, secondary school, you all meet again in the university, and of course, you form your different camps and you just go partying. Those days, it was parties that we went to most. And I think it was because we didn't have any problem with security. We didn't have problem with the security. I mean, with security, you could. I have a friend that I could, you know, we could decide to just go out at 12 midnight.
Wow.
12 midnight, and maybe 4 or 5 of us would take a stroll down to their house and knock on their door that, look, we're going, you know.
Wow.
And of course, we would have asked maybe another friend to bring a car to come pick all of us from there, or sometimes from our own house, you know.
It was safe. Yes.
It was safe.
I mean, I can attest to that, because in my part 1, I know we would have parties in UI, and we would leave Ife. We would leave Ife as late as 11:30, 12 midnight. We are going to UI. We get to UI probably around 12 midnight or so, you know, and then we would stay. And then like 5 a.m. after the party, we're all going back to school. You must be back in school maybe like 6, 7 a.m. Before 7 a.m., you are back on campus. Wow. Now looking at university, we talked about the liberty in university, but at the same time, you were studying pharmacy. Pharmacy is not for the faint-hearted. I mean, in Ife then, there are 2 particular departments that we know that they were out to get you: law and pharmacy. Yeah, even medicine. Those 3 actually. You found a lot of people they brought a lot of people in. More than 50% of them were probably not going to graduate. They would just chuck people out. How are you able to cope? Having the social life and also pharmacy as well.
Number 1, the fear of D is the beginning of understanding. D represents my mom.
Ooh.
My father called her D. The fear of D is the beginning of understanding. Number 1, you can't come back to the house, to my mom, to explain it that you failed. So you have to be at the 2 extremes. Whatever you are doing, you must balance it up. You must make sure that your academics are not affected.
Wow. You talked about the fear of D. What was your mother's name? Because I'm wondering why your father was calling her D.
It was Dorcas.
Dorcas. The fear of D was the beginning of wisdom.
Yeah.
You know, when you're talking about that fear that you had, the fear of your mother, you are on campus, you are studying pharmacy, and you knew you couldn't go back home with results that would, a fail, a C, a D, an E. Yet in this generation, we find children. I remember a particular story I heard of a boy who his father, with the father's friends, went all the way to, I don't know whether it was Canada or America, for his graduation. The man brought his friends, took all of them there. They were at the hall, got to the venue, expected to see the son. It was when the students were being called out that he opened the program, didn't see his son coming out, didn't see his son in the program. It was then they looked for the son, asking, are you not graduating? It was right there that boy told the father that no, he's not graduating, he has extra. So I'm wondering, where is that fear, the fear of our parents? Where has it gone to in our generation?